All right, I'm headed home from CrossFit. I'm going to go to Reddit for a question that I think is pretty good. And someone was essentially asking something that I have some experience with. And the question is, how did you learn to manage people as a software engineer? So I'm a software engineer, and in my next job, I could also manage people. I did it a bit in my previous role, but I never learned. I'd like to learn how to manage properly. How did you learn the skill? Did you read books, listen to podcasts, or learn by doing? So I think I'll talk through that. I'm just going to back out of the spot. I'm going to have to get gas, but I think I will wait until the end of the drive. I need to put it in reverse, not neutral. There we go. That's how we drive a car. Yeah, if you want your questions answered, leave them in the comments. I'm happy to respond to them. And if you have stuff that you want to send in a little bit more detail and keep anonymous, look for Dev Leader on social media. It's my main YouTube channel, as well as my main, my personal brand that I use. Or Nick Cosentino on LinkedIn. My profile should be open to send messages to. Okay, with that said, how do we learn how to manage people? I think I want to start this off by saying there's like different styles of doing this stuff. I turn this thing off to stop beeping, and it still beeps. It's so annoying. And I'm realizing now that I might not have enough gas to get home, but I don't want to go to this gas station before the highway. I might have to. I want to start this off by saying that there's different styles of how people manage. I'm at an intersection and I see a fire truck on the way, and this light's about to turn green, and it's going to be this awkward wait. I can't move. Anyway, different styles of leadership and management, and it's not necessarily that one is like right, wrong, better, worse than the other, but you kind of have to find what works for you. And I guess I have general ideas about characteristics that I would like to see in good managers, good leaders, but how you, like, your implementation may look different. So the question this person said, like, how do you learn? I would say the number one thing for me was like the experience and trying to figure out like how I can try to drive some of those things that like the good qualities or characteristics that I want in a manager or leader. Like, how do I do that myself? Like, what are the things that I can stay on top of that align with me, that give me those results? But that took a lot of practice. So if I back up a little bit, for those of you that don't know, if you're new to the channel or haven't watched the video of mine where I explain this, I'm currently a principal engineering manager at Microsoft. I've been doing this at Microsoft for just under 5 years, but I've been managing teams for about 12 and a half years now. Before Microsoft, I managed at a startup, but the unique thing about my journey, I would say, is that right when I had graduated university, I was only working for a couple of months at this startup, and then they said, do you want to basically lead teams? And I always say, like, I would love to tell people it's because I was so awesome at doing this kind of stuff, but the reality is, like, I had no idea what I was doing. And I remember they said, like, you seem to be able, like, literally, maybe not an exact quote, but like, you seem to be able to talk to the engineers well. Like, you communicate well. You seem to be able to get on the same page as people. Do you want to try this? Like, that was the bar that I had to meet. Small company, low bar, but it was just like, you seem to communicate well. So I tried it, but for me, I was a individual contributor and manager for 8 years. So I was still writing code every day. So my journey is a little bit unique in that regard. Not to say it's better or worse, just that's sort of the unique spin on it. And that meant that, like, I was truly just taking a lot of time to try and learn how to do this stuff effectively. So I'm about to pull into the gas station here, but just before I cut the video, because this will be the only part that I edit, I'll talk about some things I tried early on and kind of explain how it evolved. But the long story short is essentially going to be that a lot of it was trial and error. So let me get parked here, and I will cut the video as soon as I back into the spot. And I said I would never come back here in one of the videos, but I'm going to be pumping gas for like 15 minutes. Okay, 10 years later, we're done pumping gas at this terrible gas station. Let's get pulled out of here. Okay, so where I left off was essentially, I was going to give you a bit of a brief on kind of how I started with this stuff. And I would say in the very beginning, it started with like a lack of understanding of what do managers actually do, right? And I knew, like, part of me knew that I had more responsibilities, but the other part was like what is actually the goal? So, my first step was like, okay, I set up one-on-ones with team members, but like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with these things. Like, I just know that's what you do. And then because there's like team lead and project lead aspects to it, it's like, okay, I know I have some responsibilities over making sure these areas go. But the other thing that I need to mention here is like, this is literally a startup where we're just figuring out everything. The founder was a police officer. He had a bit of a technical background to start building the product, but like, it's not like it was founded by software engineers that had like run previous companies and stuff before. Like, we're just figuring stuff out. So it was cool because I got to figure stuff out too, but it meant that it's hard because you have to figure stuff out. I don't want to say completely on your own, but it's not like there's an obvious template to follow. But one of the core pieces of advice that I received that I shaped basically all of my management and leadership around is my HR leader that I had at the time, amazing person. And one of the very first things that she kind of told me was situational leadership, and essentially instilled upon me that the idea that like every single person that you manage is going to be different. Even if you have two junior people, you may have to, work with them differently. You might have two people that are very experienced. You may have to work with them differently. So just this idea that as you're navigating management and leadership, you will, like, to be effective, you're constantly going to need to try and figure out how to work with the individual and not a cookie cutter approach. So she had told me this early on, and I think like the concept made sense, but I'm like, I don't have enough experience to like see this in practice, right? Because to me, everything is new. Everything is different. I can't have a cookie cutter approach because I don't even know what I'm supposed to be copying and pasting. So what I realized early on was that I'm not doing an effective job, for me, like splitting my time between programming and managing the teams. And I've said this before on videos, but like I would kind of flip-flop back and forth. For like, 2 weeks I would program really hard, and then another 2 weeks I would manage, and then felt like I wasn't programming much. And at one point I said, okay, and this is actually, for those of you that don't know, how my main channel, Dev Leader, came to be. It actually was started as my blog. And I said, I need to spend more time learning about this stuff. And so to this person's question, like, was it books? Like, what resources? For me, it was just articles online and a couple of books. And that's how I started. And I said, I'm going to try to create this blog where I document the things that I'm trying to learn. And it's called Dev Leader because if you think about what those two words are, I am a developer getting into leadership. It's also intended for developers and like people doing both, like development and leadership. Could also imply that you are a developer leading others. So the whole idea behind it was like, I'm going to learn in public and document what I'm learning so that maybe others can get a benefit from it. But it started off with both articles and books, and I don't know the specific ones off the top of my head in terms of books. But the interesting thing is when it comes to management, at least when it comes to like the leadership aspects of management, I would say you don't need to find a specific software engineering one. Like, leadership is a thing that you can look at across different domains, organizations, and stuff like that. So you don't have to go look. Like, I'm just trying to, if you're looking for a book You don't have to like try to hyper focus on a software engineering one for leadership. In terms of management and organization of work and things like that, you may find, I don't know any off the top of my head, like software engineering specific ones. But I think a lot of these things that we talk about, leadership, management principles, you could probably take from other domains as well and apply the concepts effectively. But what I learned going through that was a couple of things. One is that I did find it very effective to write about the things I was learning, which is why I've made videos and stuff encouraging others to try it. It's not going to be great for everyone. For me, it ended up failing at one point because I felt like I couldn't keep up, right? But I think the act of writing about it was helpful for me to digest what I was learning. But on its own, I said this the other day when I was talking about learning how I learn, which sounds kind of funny, but I do not learn by reading. And I do not learn by watching or listening. I learn by doing. And the fact that I was writing the stuff that I was trying to read from articles and stuff, I think that actually helped. So it was another level of like being able to not quite practice this stuff, but like digest it. I think that helped me learn. But nothing is ultimately going to beat the experience. So my bias, as I talk to all of you about like, you know, like I'm sitting here, I'm not going to tell you the best way to go learn this stuff because I can't answer that for you. It's going to be situational. But for me, what worked was, you know, being exposed to concepts. So if someone just said, for example, like, hey, there's this concept called radical candor, and some of you might know what that phrase means, others might not. It's this idea where if you are trying to coach others, right? You're trying to give feedback to others, that if you have a really strong trust and respect relationship with that person, like imagine your best friend, right? This guy's got something hanging off his car, like a huge zip tie. What is going on here? If you have a really good trust relationship, a lot of respect, you can actually be very direct with people. So again, if you imagine your best friend came up to you and they were like, hey Nick, like, just wanted to let you know that when you know, in your presentation, when you say words like that, it actually makes you sound stupid. If your best friend said that to you, you would likely, I mean, you might be taken back for a second, but you would likely believe that they're trying to help you. And now if you replace that with not your best friend, but a colleague that you've never talked to, you would probably be like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? Like, basically what I'm saying is if you change the dynamic of the relationship between people, you can have a dramatically different effect. So when we talk about giving feedback, it's challenging because a lot of times we're trying not to hurt people's feelings, or how do we deliver this? But if you've built up like a really good relationship, you can actually be more direct, and it can be a lot more effective. And it's because people have a lot of trust and respect. So for me, someone told me about this concept, and there's a book called Radical Candor. And I think that, like, for me, I read the book, but it wasn't like when I read the book, I like absorbed everything from it. It was more just like, okay, someone's explained this concept to me. And I think like it took a while. Like, I think the concept made sense, but it took a while to think about the other flavors of radical candor. What I mean by that is like there's something called ruinous empathy, and I can't remember the other ones, but it's basically on a matrix explaining the other pieces that are not radical candor. And to kind of map that all out and make it make sense in my mind, like I think that just took time, and it took seeing it in practice for it to kind of solidify. So the idea of radical candor, the concept made sense, especially after reading the book. But in terms of like, okay, like how do I go put this into practice? To me, a book doesn't help me do that personally. So I'm not saying, again, I don't want to advise like that, therefore none of you should read books, not what I'm saying. But I feel like for me, it's not the effective thing. It's like I need to skim that stuff, get concepts, and then I need to practice them, put them into action, experiment with them. And I think honestly, that's what worked for me over my 8 years at Magnet Forensics, managing people, was trying things out. I tried things early on, like, okay, I want to make sure that my team knows I want to build trust and respect with them, right? So they already know from a programming perspective, this is one of the things that's always been kind of helpful for me, is that my teams know I can program. I don't have to, like at Microsoft for 5 years now, I don't program at work, but my team knows that I program in C# all the time outside of work. So they can put me on code reviews and I can critique their code. They can ask me how to go build certain things and talk about code, and I can walk through that with them. Like one of my principal engineers is working on a very big design right now, and I mentioned this the other week, but I was saying like, hey, in 101 sometimes we start going down a bit of a rabbit hole and we're talking about code implementations on his design. So generally, I think that my teams can have some respect for me and trust in me, that I can be relatable as a developer. Like I understand some of the things that they're going through. But this is all stuff that I had to experiment with. So one of the things I tried early on was like doing surveys with my team. So periodic surveys, where it was like, hey, like, I can't remember how I structured them, but it was to get a pulse, right? Like, let me know, how you're feeling about work. Am I doing a good job supporting you? And then I would take action on those things. So just trying to demonstrate to people, like, look, I am paying attention. I am trying to do this. I want you to know I'm listening. I am here to support you. Because as I said early on, one of the things I struggled with was balancing between I'm just programming versus I'm managing teams. So that was one of the actions I experimented with to try and demonstrate to my team, look, I'm being proactive and trying. So did I keep that up for long? No. I don't think that it was an experiment that was, at the time, the way it was implemented, it wasn't worth the effort. Maybe it helped, maybe it served a purpose for a period of time, so I'm not disregarding that. But I don't think that it was something long-term where it was like, I don't know, maybe the cadence was kind of weird or whatever else, but I'm like, hey, I tried it. I learned some things. Cool, let's keep going. But over time, like how you're leading teams, how you're managing groups of people, it sometimes takes having different people on the team or managing different teams to have more exposure to different personality types, different challenges to navigate, which is another reason when I talk about this stuff, I'm like, the time spent in the role, like the being hands-on with stuff, that for me is where I'm learning. So I know at Magnet Forensics, and I can say this confidently, like I was very fortunate. I had really strong engineers that reported to me, and even though at the time they would have been junior, I mean, not to say that I wasn't, right? Like I'm new to the industry at the time, but like I can say, like with hindsight too, like to back it up, like extremely strong engineers, and I know that because they're leading teams now, they're directors now. Like they've been very successful leading people. There's two people in particular that I had conversations with, and I was like, while I managed them, and I was like, individually, like, I think that you're like incredible with working with people, mentoring people. Like, do you have an interest in this? And it was always no, like I just want to focus on code. And as we grew in our careers, like as I went to Microsoft and stuff, even one of them before I left had moved into a management role, and it was like I knew it. Like I knew they just have it in them. They're very, very good at it naturally. So I was just lucky, and I don't want to downplay that. Like I'm not trying to say like I can't be an effective manager, but I think I got very lucky early that I had such strong engineers to lead. And that meant that I could build some momentum in what I was doing. It didn't constantly feel like I'm drowning trying to manage people. It was like I got a good team. And I continued to have a good team throughout all of my time at Magnet. I mean, I would say in general, I've been very lucky in my entire career to have very strong engineers. And it's only been sprinkled. My God, this thing is the most annoying when it's cold. I've only had a few, like in my 12 plus years, a few instances of like challenging employees. Yeah, just like incredibly fortunate that way. So again, that's a blessing and a curse, right? Like the blessing is that it felt like I could build momentum, I could focus on trying things out. Because if it was constantly like, oh man, I got a challenging employee, I don't know, like maybe that would have dissuaded me and I would have been like, I don't want to be a manager, screw this. Like, I'd rather just code. But it proved to me that I had the ability to kind of have a multiplier effect, and I really liked that. The curse part that I'm kind of half kidding about is when you're exposed to challenging employees a lot, you're going to learn a lot about those types of scenarios. Like I would for sure, because I'm a hands-on person. So if I was constantly dealing with like, I don't know, having to help skill people up because they're underperforming, or having difficult conversations with people because they're being an asshole to team members and stuff like that, I think that, yeah, that would be hard, but if I stuck with it, then I would have a lot of experience doing that. And at this point in my career, I have experience doing that, but I also, and I don't know if it ever changes, like I dread having to do that. But perhaps if I spent even more time hands-on with it, it would just be more comfortable, second nature. So I think I want to try translating what I'm saying into like a recommendation for folks, but it's hard because, you might learn differently than me. So I think there are tons of articles, books, podcasts, videos, whatever. There's tons of resources on leadership. And I think what I would recommend personally is get exposed to different concepts in leadership and management. My philosophy when it comes to leading and managing people is that my role is all about enabling my team to do their best work possible. So I have like everything I do is like grounded in that. You might end up forming a different opinion about that, right? You might say, I don't believe in that. I believe that everything must be purely a business value. And I'm sorry, I had to switch lanes there. I was focused on that. So, and that's not wrong. Like if you have a different opinion and that's how you want to structure like how you're going to lead and manage, like that's totally fine, right? But like I ground everything in that approach that I mentioned because that's my framing of everything I do. It keeps me sort of aligned to that when I'm trying to make decisions. So if you have something like that for yourself, it could be very valuable, but it might be difficult for you to figure that out if you're just getting started. So what I'm saying is like you might leverage resources and stuff to be exposed to concepts. But what I wouldn't recommend, and this is advice in general, is just because one person says it or just because it's a thing that exists does not make it the right thing or the right thing for you. I'll give you a completely tangential example to try and illustrate a point. And for those of you that don't know, I used to bodybuild for a long time, so a lot of my examples are like from the gym or nutrition and stuff. But I think a really good example of what I'm trying to say here is take diets, right? intermittent fasting. You could be a carnivore diet. You could be vegan. You could be whatever you want, Atkins diet, anything you want. And you'll always have people saying, this is the diet that rules them all. It is the thing that works. I lost so much weight, or I gained so much muscle, or I fixed everything in my life. This is the diet. The problem with this is that in all of these cases, it's not that a diet was better or worse universally. It's that someone was able to adhere to it. And the things that drive an individual to adhere to a particular diet, because a lot of the time, statistically, people improve all of their health markers because they've lost weight. So what happens is they go, hey, look, I lost weight. I lost 10, 20, 80 pounds doing this diet. This is the thing. It solved everything in my life. You should do it. But it's not going to work for you if you can't adhere to it. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It doesn't mean that it's right either. It's just not right for you. And that's okay. And I would say the same thing happens with leadership, management, any types of things like this. I think get exposed to the different ideas. Understand them, understand the perspective about them, understand the goals of them, and then try them out. Like, see what sticks for you. In my own experience, I have found that if I can get people to trust me, that I'm going to be there to support them, like that is my goal, and they build respect for me because they see that I'm accountable to those things, that what happens is that they're very transparent with me, which I really value. I find it very difficult to do my job and lead people if people are not transparent. Just to give you a brief example, like I love this. I don't require it, but it's like, I love the openness that comes with this. I'll have employees that they are very comfortable to tell me like what's going on in their life if they're having challenges. And I'm not a therapist. My wife is. I'm not. But my point here is the fact that I have built enough trust and respect with my team members that they actually feel comfortable that they can tell me things, to be like, hey, like, look, I'm struggling with this, and it's because I got something going on outside of work, and like it's this thing with my family, whatever. And they're just open enough. To me, that's pretty incredible. But I find that it's like I lean into my particular leadership style. That seems to be one of the results. And then as a side effect of that, I find that I can work with the teams I have very effectively. Because when there are problems, they talk to me about them. And then I can work with them on them. That approach may not work at all for you. And that's okay. So that's, I think, my number one recommendation is don't, if I can impart the wisdom that my HR leader imparted on me, situational leadership, it's also going to be situational leaders. Things are going to work different for different people. So I hope that helps give some perspective. I have tons of stuff to talk about on this topic, but I figured I'd go down this path. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.